It's been a minute since the DJI Goggles Integra have released, and I've owned these basically since launch. I purchased them right away, and they came about a week after I placed the order. And I've been using them almost exclusively for over 3 months. So I'm going to cover what I like the best about them after that amount of time, and some of the things that I'm not crazy about now after some extended use. So let's get right into it. First up, the built-in battery. This was one of the main reasons why I purchased these in the first place. The integrated battery solution is so convenient, and it's handy, and it makes for easier transportation. It's got great battery life. Even after 3 months and using this thing almost exclusively, I can say that the battery life is great. I can fly, 4 or 5 packs and still have over 50% charge in this thing, and it charges pretty quickly, USB Type-C. So very happy with this, and like I said, it is convenient, and you don't have that wire. Just to remind you, the V2 and the V1 and the Goggles 2 had this external battery pack that you had to plug in, with a kind of barrel connector here, and you had to put this in your pocket. You had to worry about it unplugging during flight and losing power to your feed. It just wasn't great. There were a lot of things that people kind of modified to have some clever solutions for this, mounting it to the back of the strap and everything like that. But at the end of the day, you still had a wire connecting your goggles to a battery, which wasn't ideal. So to see that go away was fantastic, and I appreciate it literally every time I grab my Goggles Integra to go fly. And to not have to remember to pack, a goggle battery in addition to all your lipos for your drones and things like that is super convenient. Also, the remote ID is fantastic. Another reason that I bought these in the first place. Since I have an Avata, that I wouldn't want to be connecting a phone since one of those firmware updates came around, requiring you to connect a phone to access the DJI Fly app so that they can ping your location and kind of, fulfill the remote ID requirements were a major pain in the ass. So to have that built in, even though, the topic of remote ID is for a separate video, to not have to deal with that headache was a major plus, and still is every time I grab these with my Avata to fly. Now, on the topic of the integrated battery and everything like that, the form factor, again, major selling point for these. I appreciate it every time I go to use these. Been using them for over 3 months. They fold up super small and take up very little space inside of my bag. You can see next to the V2s here, they are significantly smaller, significantly lighter. Now that does come with some drawbacks, which I'll get into later, primarily regarding comfort of these, but I've been using them exclusively 3 months, and I don't really see many reasons to not grab these because the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Let's continue. The displays. These OLED displays inside of this Goggles Integra system are fantastic. The clarity is awesome. Everything is just brighter, crisper, and the colors really pop. It kind of helps, when those deeper blacks and everything, it does help you see better. So when you're flying in tighter spaces, higher resolution helps with this as well. You're going to see things that you may not have noticed with a lower resolution, like the 810p found on the V2s. And you'll be a better pilot because of it. You're going to notice things faster, sooner, whatever, and you're going to be able to kind of, fly better. So definitely appreciate that, and I notice it every single time I turn these things on. When you see that DJI logo that's black except for the white lettering, you notice the OLED contrast there. So awesome. I really do appreciate that, and the few times that I do revert back to my V2 goggles, it is pretty jarring to go back to a non-OLED display. Now the Goggles 2, which are like this, only without the battery pack, also have those OLED 1080p panels, and they look, from what I understand, almost identical. So if that's something that you're curious about, yeah, you get that with those too. This is just exclusively for the Goggles Integra. Now, next, device switching. This is something that was a major pain for me with the V2s. Having multiple drones, I have over 10 drones, FPV drones specifically, that if I were going to bind all these different protocols, so we have the Caddx Vistas, we have the FPV air unit, or the DJI Air unit. And then we got the newer DJI O3 and all of these other things like the DJI FPV drone, the DJI Avata. The V2 goggle system did not play nicely with binding multiple drones and multiple protocols. So I found that I had to rebind different units every time I was switching back and forth. So the Avata and then the FPV and then back to Caddx Vistas and multiple drones, it kind of automatically forgot the previously bound devices. And I'd have to rebind manually, which was not ideal. That doesn't happen with the Goggles Integra. And in fact, they actually got rid of the bind button, which I talked about in one of my previous videos, but there's no pinhole bind button anymore. You actually just push and hold the power button. You hold it in until it makes the double beep, and you can then hold the bind or push the bind button on one of your drones to bind it. And it remembers everything. So it goes back and forth between multiple drones, multiple protocols with ease, and it doesn't forget anything, at least not in my experience anyway. And remember I have over 10 drones. So also on the topic of binding, switching back and forth between bound protocols is faster than the V2s. So if you are coming from the V2s, you know that to do that, you had to go through the system or the menus to navigate and go to the About section and tell it what type of protocol you're trying to use. And then you'd have to turn off the goggles and then turn them back on. You don't have to power cycle anymore. And it's actually, everything is just faster and more convenient. These things boot up in less than 5 seconds. So from a cold boot, holding the power button or pushing it and then holding it, turning it on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these things are on. And not just on, but like ready to use. You can navigate the menus in about 5 seconds is what it is. Versus well over 10 seconds, probably closer to 20 actually, for these to boot up and power on. But after 3 months of using these, that is definitely up there with my favorite things about them. How fast these things actually turn on. And you don't have to power cycle every time you switch drones. So if you have multiple drones, Goggles Integra, you're going to appreciate these. Now, next up, we have the micro SD and recording of the DVR. So the micro SD card, turn this off. It's right here in the top in between the lenses. It supports up to 512 gigabytes. So I went out to Amazon and purchased a 512 gigabyte chip in there just to record my DVR feed, and recording at that full 1080p 60 frames per second is definitely pretty good. Now, whether it's just reviewing some footage for fun, if something crazy happens and you wanted to see it, and you weren't recording with something else, you can set it to automatically record at launch and things like that. And with 512 gigabytes in there, that is definitely something that you won't be running out of anytime soon, especially at that lower resolution of 1080p versus 4K. The Goggles 2 and the other drone goggles, the V2s, V1s, I believe they capped out at 256 gigabytes, and the Integras are the only ones that support up to 512, which was a nice little bonus there. Now, the last thing that I put in like the really positive kind of column for these things that I appreciate the most is the ability that these things have to support the Mavic 3 as well as the Mini 3 Pro. Now it's the Mini 3 Pro only, and I believe that is all Mavic 3 class drones. So that would be the Mavic 3 Original, the Classic, and the newly released Pro Mavic 3. That you can use those drones with the Goggles Integra as long as you're pairing it with the RC Motion 2 controller. I had that in a different video, trying that out with my Mavic 3. If you want to check that out, I'll throw a little card up there for you. But it was really neat, kind of nice just to have that feature. It's not something I use regularly, but just to say that I can do it, or if I ever decide to do it again for whatever reason, it's nice to have features, and it's not something I had to pay extra for, aside from paying for the RC Motion 2 controller. All right, now that's all the positive stuff. Overall, yes, I am happy with these things. After 3 months of nearly exclusive usage, I don't have many complaints with these, but I am going to go through my top complaints now. Just to give you an idea of what you're getting into, if you're considering buying these, you should know about these because some of these could be deal breakers for you. Thankfully, none of these are deal breakers for me, but let's get into it. Top, the top negative thing, the thing I like the least about these, is the foam facial interface, especially the one that it comes with. This thing just is horrible. For me, you can see the shape of my head. I don't know what kind of shape of head you have. Maybe this will work for you, but this was extremely uncomfortable. There was a small amount of light leak. It was noticeable. And there was a lot of pressure on the bridge of my nose, especially after flying for more than 10 minutes or 2 packs, something like that. Thankfully, this thing is replaceable. I found a replacement foam interface from, I think I got this from Rotor Riot maybe, and it's softer. It uses Velcro. It doesn't have plastic, so this is very, bendy. And it was much more comfortable, but I still found after extended usage, it was putting a lot of pressure on the bridge of my nose to the point where it was actually pretty painful. And when you would take it off, it was like a final relief, but still the pain stuck around for a while. It wasn't ideal. So what I actually ended up doing on mine was cutting the nose section out. So you can see exactly where I removed. And that is just hard plastic in there, but it is kind of, the shape of a nose in general. And what it did was it allowed my nose, the shape of my nose, I don't have a huge nose, to breathe. And it relieved that pressure. And it's not uncomfortable because my nose doesn't run into this plastic. This is not a perfect solution. Like I said, everyone's nose is different. And even after flying for 10, 15 minutes, I do start to feel it, but it's nowhere near as bad as the original facial foam piece or the replacement with that foam still around the nose. I'm not really sure what went on there, but I'm sure a lot of it had to do with making these things as small and lightweight as possible. But that's what I would recommend trying out for yourself if you're having that issue and you don't have, a gargantuan nose. Next up, you may notice that on these goggles, I removed something. That would be the top strap. It's actually the the strap that went from right here all the way up around the top of the goggles and connected to the top of the battery pack. I took it off because the Velcro is very weak. It kept detaching. Every time I would go to put my goggles on, the Velcro would just fly off. And in one case, I actually was very close to dropping these pretty hard. The Velcro released unexpectedly, and I was able to catch it, thankfully. But putting it on this way, there's no more Velcro in the strap, system. It's all handled through this little click, tightener, loosener. And I found that when you put this on, without that top Velcro, it's very similar to the Goggles 2, which do not have that top strap. And you can just tighten it enough to the point where it's comfortable and you don't get light leak at all, and you're good to go. So if you're having issues with the Velcro, I wasn't able to find a replacement strap on Amazon, or at least one that, I kept finding straps for the Goggles 2 and the V2s, but none of the middle top strap for the Integra. So I just took it off and I haven't looked back. So I would recommend doing the same. It'll be safer for you. You don't have to worry about the Velcro releasing as a surprise, dropping your $500 pair of goggles on the ground or whatever it might be. So yeah, I've been happy with it, and it's even more convenient now because it really is less to do. You don't have to worry about, adjusting the length of those straps anymore. So if you're letting someone else try them, or if you just are looking to get flying as fast as possible, this is a better solution. So just get rid of that strap. That's my recommendation. Next, the FPV, the DJI FPV drone. This guy. This chunky drone is goofy as hell, but it's actually a lot of fun to fly, and it's just interesting. And I do like to fly it every once in a while. When the Integra goggles released, I noticed that it didn't support this drone. I thought maybe it would come out as a future update or something like that, but after 3 months or so now, I think it's fairly obvious that we're not going to see support for this drone with the Goggles Integra. So that's why I still have my V2 goggles around for audience feed, for pairing with the Integra feed, which is nice to have. They are compatible that way. Let someone else kind of see what's going on. Or if I want to fly this drone, I spent $1,000 on this back when it came out a couple years ago, and I don't want to just sell it for $500 now and take a loss. I enjoy the drone, and I still want to fly it. So I'll keep these goggles around, and who knows, maybe a year from now or something we'll release a surprise update or something like that. But I do think that they are trying to phase this drone out for whatever reason. Maybe we're going to see the FPV 2. That'll be interesting to see. And let's kind of wait and see on that one. But for the time being, no support for Goggles Integra and the DJI FPV drone. Next, the FOV. This was a big negative kind of headline for the Goggles Integra when these things released, that the FOV was reduced pretty significantly from the V2 goggles, the V1, and the Goggles 2. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of a comparison here using this little camera that's small enough to fit and actually show you, as close of a comparison that I think you can get without actually putting the goggles on for yourself. But I can say after 3 months, I don't care. It's plenty. The FOV is wide enough, big enough, whatever, for me to see what I'm doing and to fly well. I'm happy with it. But yeah, when I go back to the V2, it is noticeable, and it's like, whoa, okay. It's kind of like you're sitting in a room and there's a bigger TV in front of you. It's the best way I can think to explain it. It doesn't mean to say that this is a small TV, it's just a smaller TV when compared to the larger FOV of the V2s. But I think that the color and the clarity more than make up for that. So go ahead and check out this comparison just to get a better idea of it for yourself. Okay, and the last thing I have on my negative list here is the power delay, meaning this button. And this is kind of me nitpicking for whatever reason, but it happens to me all the time. All my other DJI products, and I have quite a lot, you can push and hold, and the things turn on. You notice there that this did not turn on. I think they increased the amount of time, the delay between your button pushes. So push, let go, push and hold, and then it turns on. I think that's probably a safety thing or a battery conservation thing to make sure you don't have any unintentional power ons or something like that. But I find that all the other products that I have, I can push and hold immediately and it powers on. But for whatever reason, the Goggles Integra have an extra little tiny delay in there that I'm just always too fast for. Again, that was nitpicking, but it's something that I noticed after 3 months of usage. So, in conclusion, are these goggles worth it? For $500, absolutely yes. Now, over 3 months of usage, I can say that these things are fantastic, and they are the only goggles that I reach for when I'm flying any of my drones, except for, the FPV, which require the V2 goggles. These things take up so little space in my bag. They're super convenient. I don't have to remember to bring a wire or an extra battery to actually use them, and it is just a nice pair of goggles. So if you're on the fence about purchasing these, whether you're upgrading from the V1 or the V2, or you're just getting your first pair of goggles, I'd say go for it. The price is right, the specs and everything like that are fantastic. Don't let those few drawbacks stop you from experiencing these goggles. Like the FOV, don't worry about it, it's fine. If you're worried about the non-removable antennas, unless you're like a super long-range pilot, I'd say don't worry about it. I've done a pretty wide variety of different types of flying. I've flown over a mile away over the ocean. There's a video. I have flown through, buildings with multiple walls and different types of materials with excellent penetration, no issues there. And I've done just recreational flying and just flying for fun, whatever you name it. I haven't had issues with these. So the non-removable antennas, to a lot of people, that's their biggest deal breaker. Unless you're a long-range pilot, I'd say don't worry about it. But anyway, if you are the Goggles 2, if you currently own the Goggles 2, that's about the only situation I'd say don't upgrade. because it's almost the same exact headset, except you get the built-in remote ID and the integrated battery. So unless you're in a really unique situation where you really want one or both of those features, I'd say stick with your Goggles 2 until there's like a pretty steep discount, or something newer and better comes along, which you know how that goes, it eventually will. But these things are in stock. You can find them for MSRP right now today and probably get them tomorrow in the mail. There's no supply chain issue or anything like that I'm currently aware of, but these are great goggles. It's a fantastic system and I'm having a great time with them, and it's just after 3 months, every time I use them, I'm impressed with them and I'm happy with them. So there you have it, the Goggles Integra from DJI. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you end up getting these, I hope you enjoy the goggles. Please be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, if you got something out of it, and consider subscribing to the channel, definitely helps out, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks.